Good morning, everyone. This is Tasha Bergson-Michelson from Google. I see that it is now 9 o'clock, so I am going to get us started. Today's webinar is the second in a series of 6. It's called Power Searching, Advanced Google Search for Education. So last time we talked about the basics of how search engines work and the basics of search operators that you can use to control your searching. Today, we're going to move one step deeper, particularly around the concept of predictive search. Now, I do want to tell you that I am recording this, and I will be sharing a link with you here. Whoops. I'll be sharing a link with you here where you're going to be able to find archived information. I had this close up at the bottom of the page because I did want you to know if you see this image at the bottom, the CC in a circle, all our webinars are licensed Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike, which means that you're welcome to use and broadcast and remix the content as you want. And to just quickly let you know, we have a public webinar series, and our last one was actually on the topic of Creative Commons. It was by Esther Wojcicki, who is a local high school teacher and also the Vice Chair of Creative Commons. If you look in the chat box, you will be able to see that, that I've posted the link to where you can find that. So I also want to let you know, today I am flying solo, which is good for all of us because it means I'm going to be more diligent about stopping for questions. You all can chat with each other in the search box, in the chat box, and you can send questions to me, and I will look for them during the Q&A period. So go ahead and type them in as they occur to you. You can find your chat box by looking in, you should, in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, see a little gray and blue box, and there should be an icon that looks like a little talking balloon from a cartoon or comic strip. If you, click on that, then it will open up the chat and you'll be able to see it. All right, so let's get underway. Last time we talked a little bit about predictive search. And predictive search is this idea that a lot of times when you choose to use a search engine, a popular search engine, especially for popular topics, you can type words in and boom, the answer comes up, or an answer comes up fairly quickly. However, when we're doing scholarly research, that gets a little trickier. We're often looking for very complex information. Sometimes it's in unusual corners of the web, and we need to take a more nuanced approach to our searching. And so that's what we're talking about today. And we're talking, too, about this idea of visualizing sources in your head. So this is a strategy that a lot of professional searchers and people who do a lot of online searching use. They picture in their head the perfect source they're looking for, and they look for words. They kind of read through the words in their imagined source and look for search terms that will work for them. That is to say, I think I might have referenced last time a question we use in some of our more general classes where we're looking for basketball teams that play for money, and where the questions occurred as play for money. But if you think about what would the term actually that your source would use, professional is a much better search term than play for money. But I find that when I search, I push that a lot farther. So I'm going to give you some examples. For me, for example, when I was in Kenya, and I was teaching search and doing research there, and I wanted to know about the Harambee Stars. And the Harambee Stars are the national football team, the national soccer team in Kenya. I wanted images, so I went and I did this search that you see here. And I wasn't really thrilled with the results because I saw some pictures that were very active, like this one and this one, but there were all these pictures of people just standing in line. And I I thought, this isn't what I want. I want lots and lots of action shots that I can look at. And there isn't a really great keyword that I can use to bring that up as I think about it. And so I picture the sources in my mind. I picture a series of images, and I almost look for what's the common denominator in all these images. And truly, in the images that I wanted to see, the common denominator was that I could see lots and lots of grass. And so what I did was I moved over to the left-hand side of the page where you can see there are these boxes of different colors. I actually clicked on green and found that I got a lot more pictures of people playing soccer. Now I start with this very simple example because I like the visual imagery that shows that we've got a common thread among all these sources. To give a same example that's a little more academic, so what I'm doing here is I'm clicking on this blue stripe here that tells me I have a green filter. I'm going to the box in the upper right-hand corner and clicking on it to turn off my filter. In the same way, if I looked for Tesla coils, most of what I see here is purple, but I see diagrams, and I see that they all have a white background. So if I wanted to filter for diagrams, the common denominator is that they are often on a white background. That's a fairly simple example. I wanted to start with something visual. And I'm going to move into more complex examples. But what interests me about this is that at a university level, we have the ACRL standards for information literacy. This is the the Association of College and Research Libraries. And among the standards that ACRL lays out for students in post-secondary study is that they should have the ability to choose a communication medium and a format that best supports the purposes of the product or the performance and the intended audience. So what that's saying is when students gather a lot of information, they should be able to figure out, okay, if I'm trying to convey this particular notion to this particular audience, what format, what type of writing do I want to do? Is it writing? Is it a PowerPoint? Is it a graph? How do I best convey this information? And I would argue that search is the corollary mirror image of that. That if I'm wanting a certain kind of information, I should be able to imagine and call to mind the source that rationally and logically would hold that information. So it's kind of funny for me because I've gotten to the point where I find when I'm working on a complex search that actually the first thing that occurs to me is an image in my head of the layout of the information. So for example, once I was working on ethnomusicology, and I really wanted to know, and actually the Boston molasses disaster of 1919 where 2.5 million gallons of molasses exploded out of a drum and sent a tidal wave down the street and wiped out a large part of the North End. And I wanted to see conversations among ethnomusicologists about songs that had grown up out of that disaster. And actually what I wanted was a conversation around how they identified the background to the origin of the song. And I wanted to see that conversation played out. And for me, the first thing I imagine in this case is actually this. This is my representation of what I see in my mind when I think of my information need. To me, this represents either the comments in a blog, the responses in a forum post on a discussion list, and this is actually the format. So each of these is a person. Usually there's some avatar or picture here. But this is what actually comes into my head to describe first what I'm looking for with this information need. And then my job is to figure out what's searchable about this format that will allow me to find the information I'm looking for. So I see shapes of information in my head. And sometimes it's easier because I know if it's a scholarly need, it's going to be a scholarly source in a traditional scholarly format. That tells me what types of sources to use. For example, there's, Google Scholar. We'll go to the advanced search later. There's Google Scholar. There are proprietary fee databases that the CSU system, to which the CSU system has subscriptions. I can either use Google Scholar to do a broad search across databases and then click through and use those databases to which the CSU system has a subscription. Or if I know I need a specific subject like psychological data and there's a database that matches that, I can go directly search that database. And of course I can use the catalog to look for books. So that if I make a scholarly determination that I need scholarly information, that's the strategy I'll take. Sometimes what I need is data that isn't precisely scholarly. So for example, say I needed to know, this is back to my visit to Kenya, I needed to know the taxes on royalties, how much the Kenyan government collected in taxes on royalties each year. That is a kind of more interesting and difficult question because it may or may not be in a scholarly source, and what I need is kind of across a number of years. And so, of course, what I see in my head immediately is simply this. And then I see words. What I imagine is that the kind of information I want is likely to be in a table of some sort, that it's likely to be that it's likely to have different years, either across the top or down the side, and then it's likely to have columns of other information, probably one of which is going to be royalties. So when I have an information need, what I do is I stop and think. And I stop and think and ask myself the age-old who, what, where, when, not actually when as much, although I don't have it on here, but probably when, why, and how. So who cares about what I care about, and who do I trust to give me the information I need? What words do I use to describe it? What words would my trusted source use, and what would be most likely to appear in the type of source I want? Where would this information be published? Again, this may very well lead me back to proprietary databases and to books. Absolutely valid. And why would someone use one format or another to communicate the information? And how will I know when I found what I want? Because with a lot of students, this is actually really the problem, is identifying that what they find is actually a good match to what they need and answers their question. And when I speak of students here, this is something that I hear about a lot. For those of you who are in the education departments, it's something I hear about a lot from K-12 librarians and classroom teachers. So let's look at how this actually plays out, because I prefer live searching. So if I just do a search for taxes on royalties Kenya, I come up with a bunch of information, and I can scroll through it, but really the data I want isn't so much here. I don't want taxes from India. I don't want general discussion on Kenyan tax rates. I actually want to know how much the government got, which is an interesting question, because when you think about it, if the Kenyan government is posting Kenyan information about taxes, presumably for a Kenyan audience, there's really no reason the word Kenya would appear on the page. So I have to go to a different signal. And so I'm going to show you what I'll do, and then we're going to talk through, then we'll pause for questions, and we'll talk more about the operators I'm about to show you. So when I thought of this, when I was facing this search, I kept taxes on royalties, because I thought the word taxes probably will appear on the document. Royalties is specifically, those are two specific things I want. Probably don't need the word on. It's not really going to change anything, but have it. I left it in there. I actually tend to drop all small words, but this is more comprehensible to look at. So the question is, how do I define Kenya in this search? And the truth is that my likelihood is that it's going to be on a website within the Kenyan domain. Like if you look at the results that we see here, actually the top result, if you look at the web address, it's telling us .uk means it's from the UK. We have CC, we have India, and so on and so forth. I'm going to cheat and go with what I know here. I can do a search for KE, which is the Kenyan domain, or if I take a moment and go do a pre-search, I will know that Kenyan government websites are go.ke, and I'm going to guess that it's the government that's publishing this information. So first I thought, okay, the word Kenya is not going to appear on the site, and I've come up with a workaround to specify Kenya for me. And there are actually multiple ways you can do this workaround, but the site:/go.ke is fastest for me for the way I personally search. The next thing I do is I consider back this image I had in my head. Well, what is this going to be? I could actually go to Google Images to do this search, but I'm guessing that this is a fairly, in the world of web pages available and produced here in the US, that this is a fairly obscure piece of information, and so I'm thinking that it's not nearly as likely to be an image as it is to be something dictated by a file type. And so in this case, I can use exactly that operator, file type : and I can put after file type I think that it's probably going to be an Excel spreadsheet, so I use the code for an Excel spreadsheet, which is XLS. If, in fact, I thought that I wanted a range of dates, I could also do set my parameters fairly wide and say I want 2000. I want numbers somewhere between 2000 and 2011. Now, whether I need all of these elements to my search, whether I need I'm pretty sure I need the taxes on royalties portion, but whether I need to define that it's Kenyan and that it's an Excel spreadsheet, and that it's also between 2000 and 2011 that's a lot. I don't necessarily need to narrow it that far, and in fact, that fails. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start playing with my elements. Now, interestingly, I just took off the years, and what I see in front of me here, I have two results, which is significantly better than 47,810, let's say. Two results, very potentially clear. And I'm seeing here that it says taxes on other goods and services, royalties, and then it has a bunch of numbers. And it's a statistical abstract, and it's from the government of Kenya, so I'm thinking that's a pretty good bet. And when I click through to look at the HTML, I see, in fact, that we do have a subcategory for royalties right where I expected it to be, in the middle of a spreadsheet, and here I have some longitudinal data to work with. So I'm going to actually pause. If you have any questions, please go ahead and submit them in chat. And then we're actually going to dig down and talk about these operators and how they work. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so I am going to continue. If you do find that you have a question, please feel free to submit it in chat, which is that, that small icon in your control panel on the bottom right of your screen that looks like a talking bubble from a comic strip. So let's start by looking at the file type operator. So there are a number of operators in Google, and these apply to many popular search engines, so you can use them, play with them more broadly and see how you like how each of them works. And a lot of our operators are structured file type, a specifier of what you're looking for and a colon, and then you enter essentially the equivalent of your keyword, your flexible variable for what you're looking for. And you can't do just anything. Like if you're looking for a line in a poem, you can't do poem colon. You can only do the ones we define. And if you come and look at our archives, which I will send you the address to after the webinar, I will put in the notes a link to a page where we, just last month, compiled an exhaustive list of the operators that Google currently uses. I'm only going to go into the top ones today. I'm only going to go into the top ones today so that we can cover the ones that you're most likely to use. So, file type. And I saw a question about OR, which I will discuss in a minute. File type, I can basically put in any combination. One of my favorite is OGG, which is a wiki sound file. So I can do a search for file type OGG. I can look for I love you in Morse code, and then I can click through and look at these files. Actually, I have an OR example here because let's say I wanted to look for Lewis and Clark, and let's say I wanted a file type for a Google Earth file. So I wanted to see something about the Lewis and Clark expedition. So I can use file type :KMZ. What's interesting here, I wanted to show you the OR, and I'm seeing that actually this has automatically synonymized. So you can see here, we know that if you're looking for KMZ files, you might also, oh, there are no KMZ files showing on this screen. Hold on. Ironically. There are KMZ files on the subject, but it has synonymized to KML. On the hypothetical instance that it did not, if I spell correctly, KML, this result won't look substantially different, but you can do file type KMZ or file type KML. The OR, as we talked about last time, needs to be in all capital letters. And as we discussed, it only impacts the words on either side of it. So if you want to do a phrase, you would need to put the phrase in quotes. But interestingly, you can also look for, let's try this out with a different, like, let's say we wanted a file type shockwave is SWF, yes, is a flash, or I don't know why you'd be looking for this or the other, for these together, but as you can see here, the OR allowed me to find both Flash files and PowerPoint files. But if you look down the results list, what you will see is that they are all either PowerPoints or Flash, and no other kind of document is coming up. So I'm wondering if anyone has any questions on file type. And I will be showing you the advanced search screen later, and we'll look at where you can also specify file type there, but you can only, you can do, I think there are about 13 that you can access through advanced search. The point of showing you the file type :OGG was to show you that that anything could work. Okay, so I'm seeing, I see a bunch of questions around file type. Thank you. So one question is there a way you can get a list of file types, and could I share the top 10 file types? So the answer to that is later I will show you, I'll show you now in advanced search. So I can get from a results page, I can get to advanced search here. We'll look at it a little more thoroughly later. But in advanced search, there is a file type right here. And this is showing it's got shockwave marked because that's what I last searched for. In advanced search, I can only pick one at a time, one format at a time. But these are, I guess what you'd say, the top file types. However, as I said, you can do a search for any combination of file types. And if the particular combination of letters that you put in shows up as the file type, you can find it by using the file type operator in the general search box. Does that answer your questions about file type? And also I see a question about whether this will all be presented in writing, and yes, there will be a written summary of all this later because I know we're moving quickly, so I will absolutely make sure to post a written summary. Also, by the way, I post a timeline of the webinar so that you can, if there's a particular part you want to go to, you can see the timestamp and just zoom the archive towards it. Okay, so moving on from file type, the next that I want to discuss that I showed you in the Kenya Taxes on Royalty search is cite colon. So the cite operator is actually hugely flexible. So let's say, for example, I had been researching Henry May's role in the free speech movement. And let's say I had used Internet Public Library and had come across this fantastic website at Berkeley, an archive, a digital archive. Here, let's go there. If we go to the Internet Public Library and we did a search for free speech movement, and I found this digital archive here at Berkeley. Now, I don't immediately see a search box. I can actually go into the archives here and search. But sometimes when I'm looking at a website trying to plumb it for all its information, I like to use several different methods of searching it to make sure I cover everything. So I can actually take this URL, this web address appearing at the top, and cite colon, and now I'm going to be searching within this particular portion of the Berkeley website. You can see that I'm much more specific here than berkeley.edu because I'm both within the Bancroft server and within the directory called FSM, or Free Speech Movement. And so now I can enter my search terms, Henry May, and the results I get, these are the pages that are known that mention Henry May within this website. And again, if you look at the web addresses, you can see that they are all from within that particular directory. So not only can I search like within google.com or within sfsu.edu for information, but I can go more in depth. And I really love this because when I find, because part of predictive search is not just being able to tell ahead of time what the format of something is going to be, but it's also keeping a part of your brain looking for patterns in information. So for example, if I'm looking at a website and if I find a page that's really excellent for me and it has a lot of information with colons, birth, colon, information, hometown, colon, information, and I look at the URL and I see that I'm within a particular directory of a website, say something.edu/inventors, then I can say, oh, I want to know the hometown, I want to know all the inventors who came from Vinci, Italy. Then I can actually take that URL with the full directory and search on it and search for hometown colon Vinci and pull up all the, or I don't need the colon, search for hometown Vinci and pull up all the parts, all the pages in that directory that list an inventor as being from Vinci. And I'm sorry, that's an example I gave without something to show you on the screen, so I apologize. Anyway, so when I'm using the cite operator, I can use it to dig deeply into directories I've found. I can use it to search within a site, like census.gov Halloween, and find everything the Census Bureau has to say about Halloween. I can also get more specific. For example, we saw before when I did a search for information in Kenya, I can do search for EDU. In fact, here's an interesting point. If I was looking for Lewis and Clark information and I wanted it from an academic source, so I do cite:/edu, I run into a problem, which is that a lot of my top results are from Lewis and Clark University. Now, they may have something fabulous about Lewis and Clark, and then that's a whole nother level of search, but to show you quickly, if I want information from an EDU and I want it to be about Lewis and Clark, but I don't want the university in the way, I can use a minus sign, which, as you may recall from last time, is Google's not operator, in front of a cite operator. So that here we have information. Oh, we have another Lewis and Clark. So I have to do another minus cite:/lcsc.edu. I might add the word expedition instead. Again, last time we talked about positive and negative narrowing, that if you keep having to go minus, 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 that sometimes it's better to just add a word like expedition that you expect, or Jefferson, or something else that you expect to appear on the page. But here, by knotting out these two university sites, there's another one. I'm getting closer to what I want. Let's do one more, lc.edu. Okay, so this is a pretty good looking result now for the very simple need that I laid out. So a couple of things to note here. First of all, you can use a minus sign with no space after it in front of a cite operator to get rid of a particular site. Same thing, you can use a minus sign in front of a file type operator to get rid of a particular file type. The other thing to note here is, as I've listed all these that I don't want to appear, I don't put a Boolean operator between them. You may recall from last time that what we have is an implied and, which I should also tell you, for those of you who spend a lot of time searching, it's a fuzzy and, which means that when you and a bunch of words, when you put a bunch of words in, we try first to find all of them, and if we then find most of them, that's what you get as a result. But these are all anded together. I don't want to put or between them, which is a common mistake. If I put or between them, then you'll notice that my results are all bad again, because what I've said is I want Lewis and Clark, and I want cite:/edu, and I don't want this one, or I want these, but I don't want this one, which allows this one to appear again, as indeed we see happening here. I want to check with you that that makes sense, and I want to stop and take questions on cite:/. So if you have any questions on the cite operator, I see an excellent question. What I see here is, why does there appear to be different versions of Google? I often don't see the same options on the left-hand side that you have. I couldn't search images by color, for example. Okay, so I have a couple of responses to that. I'm going to answer that quickly, because there are a number of issues that could be going on. One is if you're using an old version of a browser. One time that I see a lot of, sorry, let me show you what we're discussing. We're discussing here the left-hand panel. Pardon my beautiful circle. So as you move from corpus to corpus, or you can say from medium to medium, what's there changes. So here I'm in everything. I have a couple of choices down here, and I have this link, More Search Tools, which I click on, and it opens up. If I go to Images, what's appearing on the bottom, here, let me turn on the highlighter again. This that's appearing on the bottom is specific to images. In everything search, I have a link here. Currently it says fewer search tools. Let me click on it. When I do a regular search, it says more search tools. And when I click on it, it opens. And now I have a long list a longer list of choices. So if you're using an older browser, for example, Internet Explorer 6, these will not show up, and in addition, other parts of the interface don't show up. So although we support many types of browsers and going back several iterations, it's always good to have a more up-to-date browser if you can. The other thing that changes is what's showing right here at the moment is Google's best guess about the elements of the left-hand panel that will be of interest to me given this search. So if I have to click on this more search tools here if I want that to open up. I hope that has answered the question of why you might be seeing different things in your browser. On your version of Google, it is probably and most likely a compatibility issue with older browsers. Okay, I see a number of other questions. So what other words can I use with colons? For example, if you said hometown colon, that was me misspeaking because I was not showing you something on the screen but image in my head. So I am going to provide you with a full list. Let me show you. I will be sending you a link to my team website, which is here. This link will be put with the archives. And right here we have a page called Reference Operators. Reference Advanced Operators, and if you go in here, it goes through all the operators. There are a lot of them. Most of them are not useful to most people most of the time, so I'm covering the top ones today. You will have this link along with the archive. But yeah, you can't put just anything. You have to use the ones that are predefined by Google. Okay, another question. I can't find anything using site : Chinese mental health. So here's the thing. With site, you actually need to have a portion of a web address. So if I did a search for Chinese mental health, I would then, if I wanted the Chinese Mental Health Association, for example, I would copy, so I'm looking at the first non-scholarly result in this case because I'm doing a general web search. But if I wanted this URL, if I wanted to search within this website, I would copy this portion. I leave off the www, and I would copy that portion of the URL, site : no space, and then add a search term. And now here I am looking within this website for the word awareness. But I can't, with site, I can't just use a concept or even the kind of vernacular name of a website. The title of a website won't do anything. So I hope that answers that question. Thank you very much for submitting your questions. I appreciate it. So the next operator that I used, that I tried, you may recall I tried looking for this, which is very mysterious, a very mysterious looking piece of my search. If you are able to see, I have 2 dots in between my numbers. And what that tells Google is to find any number in a range. I have no idea what's going to come up here. It's going to be a little odd. But if I do this search just flat out, you'll see in looking through the results and the bolded words, which are my search words, my search terms, you'll see that it's showing the numbers within the range. Now, excuse me, this is very well and good, but where it really gets beautiful, so number range search is perhaps what I use more than anything. I use it, it's very flexible once you start to use it creatively. So for example, I was talking about imagining sources in your head. I ran into an interesting problem actually with some high school seniors who were working on a research project, and they were looking for various statistics, for example, forecasts. Now, forecasts are difficult because they can be called forecasts, or they can be called it is estimated, or the wording might be prediction, or there are so many synonyms, and sometimes none of them appear directly. But what we realized was what always, so say our issue that we're looking for is diabetes, and we're looking for forecasts about diabetes. There is a kind of set phrase that I can imagine, say, in a newspaper article. Diabetes will reach X% of the population by the year and then a year. And sitting here in 2011, I can assume that the year that's going to be reported on is probably somewhere between 2015 and 2050. So I actually do this search. And then I use an OR. So I'm actually here essentially looking for articles and reports that talk about diabetes and give forecasts with a phrase, either by the year 2015, 2020, 2035, whatever, or by and a year. And so here I see in my results that that's exactly what shows up. I have diabetes rates and a number of different predictions. So that's what I mean about visualizing the language to which you have access as a reader. So some of this is really difficult, but some of it is really just putting yourself in the shoes of things that you've read before and trying to imagine the unique turns of phrase or the identifying turns of phrase. So I think of this strategy as using associated search terms, because I don't actually have the keyword. Well, diabetes is a keyword, but the other keyword I'm looking for isn't nearly as searchable as the thing that appears next to it. So I use this strategy actually quite a bit. So that's one thing I love about number range search. Because I've done all year searching, there are other ways I can use number range search. Like I can look for information on hybrid, actually, I'm not even going to use the word cars because there are synonyms for that, and I'm going to have an associated search term because I'm looking for ones that get more than 50 miles per gallon. So here, in this search, there we go. In this search, what I've done is I've actually used the number range operator as a greater than search. So it looks for the number 50 or any number over 50. Now, the number range operator doesn't actually work as a less than search, only as a greater than search, but I still use it all the time. And you'll notice here, I again have it within quotation marks because I want to tie the number to the phrase. I don't want there 50 cars that get over 4 miles per gallon. I want 50 or whatever number comes above it to be associated with either the phrase miles per gallon or the common abbreviation MPG. And because it's in quotes, Google won't really automatically synonymize for me, so I need to do both. I need to give both options and have the or in between to say I want one or the other. And in fact, when we look at the results, for the most part, this is what I'm getting. So I love, love, love this search. Another example would be the Senate voted 50.2 1.49. I want to know about votes that have taken place in the Senate. There are absolutely scholarly sources that might do this faster, but it's an interesting, an interesting tactic. Maybe I want to look at reports on things the Senate voted on in the past month. And once again, let me show you what I did. To do this filter, I used the time stamp over here. I clicked on past month. And now, when I look up at the top of my search results, I see that my results are from the past month, and I'm seeing a lot of votes that the Senate did. So those are some of the ways that I use number range operator, and I'm hoping to still have time to show you some more. So please, if you have any questions, this is an excellent time to submit them. And while you're typing questions, I'll answer one other that came in as to whether it matters if I put my cite operator, for example, search term first, and then my keywords, or vice versa, and the answer is it doesn't. I can do this, or I can do this. I don't see any questions come. Oh, hold on. There is one question. Two questions. So one is about spaces, and let me show you. If I do 2011, oh, that's not going to work. We're going to just do the year search again because it's very clear conceptually to look at, especially if I put the right number of dots. Here, there are no spaces in this example. If I go back to, let's look at this one for spaces. You see that with 1 dot dot 49, there are no spaces. Otherwise, Google will not know it's an operator. Here, 50 dot dot and a space is because I'm leaving it open after 50. If I put a space there, then you just see results from notes from my last webinar, which is interesting. But it basically breaks it because it's looking for anything greater than 1, which is going to be difficult. It would be any number, of course, because it doesn't see the 49 as being part of this range with a space. When I put the space in there, or when I take the space out, then it's able to interpret this as a number range. The space here, or in fact, the space here is because, after the 50 dot dot and before the MPG, is because I'm moving from a number keyword to a keyword itself. And let's see. Okay, hopefully those are all the questions. Oh, and is there a way to use file type to target online databases? So it depends on what you mean by online databases. If you're asking if you can use the file type operator to target databases like EBSCO databases, what you're actually going to want to go into Google Scholar, and their file type is going to be more like, is it a PDF or is it something you have to click through to one of your proprietary databases to access. Otherwise, sometimes I prefer to do a broad search. If you're talking about a database that's on the open web, I prefer to do a broad search to identify the database and then try digging down into it, because I might need to use a site search within that database if Google hasn't crawled the whole database, or I might need to or I might be able to use a cite colon operator along to specify the database, and then a file type colon operator to specify an Excel format. Hope that answers that question. I see a question about the plus sign, which I'm going to get to in just a minute. So thank you for your questions. Moving on. So I showed you how to use, basically the 2 dots between numbers are like a wildcard for numbers when you have a range in which you want to search. But what about wildcards for words? If you're used to using subscription databases, then you're probably accustomed to being able to stem, to take an old LexisNexis example, something like this, and look for the rest of the word. Or you're able to look for theater with an ER or an RE, or Weinstein with an IE or an IE by putting a question, IE or EI by putting a question mark in the middle of the word. Google doesn't do partial word stemming, partial word wildcards. We do have wildcards for whole terms. So like if I wanted to do, hold on. This is kind of bizarre looking search, but let's say I want to get a general overview of spending in different areas of health. And I just want to kind of go through some results quickly and see what types of spending generally seem to be going up or down. So what I've done here is I've entered, if you look in the search box, I've highlighted in blue an asterisk, and that is a wildcard that stands in for a whole word. I have spending on asterisk health because I want to look at different kinds of health, and I see in my results I have mental health, and I have public health, and I have oral health, for example. And then I also have one here, health has asterisk from, because I don't know if it's gone up, if it's dropped, if it's risen. There are a lot of different, if it's decreased. There are many synonyms for both going up and going down, and I just want to keep it open. And then I never bothered to put a wildcard at the end of a phrase because by ending my phrase, it implies that something comes after it that I'm not defining. So in fact, here it's dropped from, and next comes 13%, and here it's gone up from, and we have 0.29%, and so on and so forth. So this is an example of using wildcards and a phrase that I anticipate seeing regularly in reports or, again, articles that keeps my search flexible and open. Another way I might use this, if I'm in education, and I want to know about the cardiovascular system, but what I want to see is what teachers are using to teach about the cardiovascular system. One of the things I know from experience as a person on the web who pays attention to education, as someone in the field of education hopefully does, is that the typical structure of a URL of a web address by many, though not all, K-12 schools in the United States is K12 dot and then state, like WA.US. So when I do a search here with a wildcard, luckily it spell checks for me, with a wildcard, if you look at in the search box, I've highlighted in blue where I've put that asterisk in. Again, it gives me a chance to see from many different states things that are being posted from school and district websites about the cardiovascular system. So again, quickly questions. Yes, Google does not do partial word wildcards. You can only do whole word wildcards. Let's see. One of you, I see a question about hybrid, that you did a search for Toyota hybrid 50 miles per gallon or with the dots, but you wanted hybrids, but Toyota hybrids, but you still got information on Hondas. That just means the word Toyota is appearing somewhere on the page, and the word Honda on pages that are apparently primarily about Hondas, so you have to decide how to deal with that. You can do minus Honda, but then you won't get any pages that have the information you want that have the word Honda on them. So that is something you need to work around. If you want the phrase Toyota hybrid, you can put quotes around it. Toyota hybrid, and this is going to run for us. There we go. But then if it's like about a Prius, you're out of luck, or about the Aqua, for example, and it doesn't have the phrase Toyota hybrid. So that you're going to have to be flexible and respond as a searcher. Okay, we're getting short on time, so I want to deal with one more major operator, and that is the actually, I want to deal with one major problem that we encounter. Let's say you did a search and read some information and you didn't keep good notes, because of course no one ever does that. And you remember that the article came up, it had the word debt crises in the title. And when you do a search for the plural of crises, you find that Google helpfully said, oh, crises, you probably also want the word crisis. And so now all your results have crisis. They may also have the word crises, but basically your results are cluttered up with all these things you don't want. And it's not that you don't want the word crisis to appear anywhere in the article, because it probably does, so you don't want to do minus crisis, but you remember that like the predominant word you were looking for was crises. In the past, you would put a plus sign in front of it to freeze the term and make it exactly what makes Google only look for this word you've entered here. That is not the case anymore. We've simplified it. Now we do quotation marks. And now, although Google wants to know, did I mean debt crisis, if you look, the highlighted terms, the bold-faced terms that are my search terms are always the plural. So by putting quotes around this word, I've frozen it and said I want this word exactly as I wrote it. So for example, if you're searching for a name that tends to get spell checked automatically to something else, you put quotation marks around it. On the note of the plus sign, at this time a plus sign does nothing in Google. It does not, as commonly is believed, require a word to appear on the page. So a plus sign does not require a word to appear on the page. It does not freeze a word. Go ahead and use quotes for that. And don't use pluses currently when you search in Google. Any other questions? I thank you so much for your excellent questions, which is fantastic. I am going to wrap up talking about operators right now. We have covered all of them. There are some really fun ways more fun ways I use operators in structuring, pulling out what I imagine in my mind to be my perfect source. But what I want to share with you quickly is the advanced search. And there are a couple of reasons I want to do that. One of them is that here's the Google homepage, google.com, and you are traditionally accustomed to seeing the advanced search link appear right here. And it's not there anymore. And I know that that has caused some anxiety. So I want to show you where you find it. Look up in the corner, pardon my great drawing, up in the corner there, you'll see a cog icon. I'm going to click on it, you'll see a yellow flash. It's in the most upper, there we go, in the most upper right-hand corner. This cog, you should see a box that opened up. And in fact, in that drop-down box, you should see advanced search. When you run a search, let's say wind power, when you run a search, you then find on your results page the advanced search link here at the top of the page in the center, right under the search button. Now, when you click on advanced search, you're taken to this page. You may notice that at the bottom of this form there is a blue link. I'm going to open it up. Much of what we've talked about today with operators and in the first lesson is also doable here in advanced search. I personally prefer remembering the operators and using them as I've been demonstrating in the basic search box on the Google homepage and results page. But I know that because it's more flexible for what I need to do. But I know that educationally speaking, it's often good to show students the advanced search page, both K-12 students and others, the advanced search page to help them think through the options available. A couple of things that are here that are not elsewhere. Usage rights. For Creative Commons, if you want to look for items that the author or creator has pre-shared, has pre-approved various kinds of sharing, you can use this drop-down box to look for that, which you can't do through any other sort of search. You have the opportunity here to go beyond the site.ke and look by region. And when you click on the box, you can pick a region. You can also go to that Google property if it's in the language you speak. So, for example, you can just go to google.au to search Australian websites. Numeric range we talked about today. Date filtering we looked at in the left-hand panel. These allow you to specify where your search terms appear on a page. If you want to specify just some of your keywords, in the link I'm going to send you to the page with all the different operators, you'll find more on that subject. And since we're out of time, very quickly, I'm sorry, Google Scholar. I want to point out that for all the properties, Google Images has its own type of advanced search. Google Video has its own type of advanced search. Google Books, its own, because you have different needs for each of these corpora, for each of these types of media. And so here you'll see, this is the Advanced Scholar search. It also offers a variety of ways to search that are unique to what you need for scholarly search. When you're looking for scholarly data. So I understand that we've reached 10 o'clock. I have a few more minutes, so if you have questions you'd like to ask, I'm sorry about running over. If you have any last questions, please feel free to go ahead and put them in chat now. And while you are thinking about your questions and entering them, I'll remind you that our next webinar is in 2 weeks' time, and it's where we start to get much further afield from these traditional concepts of search. We're talking about modern search literacies. That will be run by Dan Russell, my team member in search education, and he is a specialist in sense-making and human-computer interaction, as well as search. More generally. Also, if you have questions, you may contact me at tbm@google.com. Let me put that in the chat. There is my email address if you need to get in touch with me. You'll be getting an email at the end of the webinar that will let you know, that should give you the link to the archive. This recording will be up. It's under Creative Commons Share-alike attribution, so feel free to use it, any parts of it or any content from it that works for you. And feel free to pass it on to folks. Either you can pass the link on to folks within or without CSU as works for you. And again, feel free to contact me with questions. And I see that there's a couple of questions coming in. How do things get into Scholar? That is a big and long, complex conversation, and although I would, I'm going to actually, there are a lot of ways things get into Scholar, and actually, although I know many of them, I am going to be consulting more deeply with folks inside the company prior to our webinar coming up in a few weeks that covers Scholar. But what I will tell you is we work with publishers, we work with database aggregators to get content in. We also look across the web for both known and unknown scholarly sources. Let's see. So let's see. Pardon me for a minute as I look through questions. If you have a question that's off the topic of the webinar, hang out. I will answer it for you in a little while if I can. I see someone who's looking for English lessons plans for 10th grade. Sir, if you would not mind emailing me at tbm@google.com, you and I can have a longer conversation on that as well. And yes, you are absolutely welcome to contact me with questions. I can't entirely become ready reference, but my job here is to, if you want to be teaching search to your students or to groups, my job is to provide assistance. I am a professional searcher and a professional librarian, and frankly love nothing better than talking about search, so feel free to contact me. Let's see. I'm looking to see if there are any other questions I can answer for you here. Wonder Wheel. I see a question about Wonder Wheel. So Wonder Wheel used to be yes, first of all, Wonder Wheel is gone. Let's take Lewis and Clark for an example. Wonder Wheel was an interactive tool that you used. If you did a search on Lewis and Clark, you could click on Wonder Wheel, and it would show you other searches that people who had searched for Lewis and Clark had also searched for, and you could click interactively through it. I am going to show you where you can do essentially the same thing. It's not as nifty an interface, But over here, again, in the left-hand panel, so first of all, I opened up the left-hand panel. Right now it's open, which I know because it has the fewer search tools link instead of the more search tools. And then right here is related searches. So if I click on related searches, what it does, in just a moment, there we go. Well, so it tells me Lewis and Clark because I was lazy and didn't put in the and. But what this is showing me is other searches that people who searched for Lewis, Clark, or here, let's do Lewis and Clark, just because that's what most people would do. Okay, Lewis and Clark. Now what I'm seeing here are other searches that people did through after they did searches for Lewis and Clark, searches that they did that were related to the concept of Lewis and Clark. And I can click on any of these and run it as a search. And with the thing about Wonder Wheel was when I clicked on one, then the whole kind of visual image would change and it would give me another circle with different spokes off of it. You can still do that with a more like this. So I can kind of wander my way through a set of searches that people have done. And so some folks like this for brainstorming purposes with their students. Let's see, art history timelines. I see a question. What about art history timelines? Can I find one particular search engine that will lead me into a particular time period? How fascinating. That is a great question, and I would like, I have answers for it off the top of my head. I'd like to give the most useful answer to you, so if you would email me at tbm, let me write it in again, tbm@google.com, and anyone else who wants to hear the answer. So the question is, what about art history timelines? Can I find one particular search engine that will lead me into a particular time period? I'd like to work that through with you a little more thoroughly. So go ahead, email me. If that question also interests you, email me and we'll do a common thread to talk about it. Let's see. So we've gotten a little informal at the end here, but thank you all for bearing with me. Again, if there are any other questions, probably if you have something related to what we were talking about today, I'm going to change a bit what I said before. Go ahead and ask it here. Otherwise, do feel free to email me. It's what I'm here for, and I will do my best to answer you. Thank you all. I've kept you over. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attendance. Please feel free to share as you see useful. Because personally, I'm deeply passionate about making it easier to find information. Google, again, is written for all, and when you're doing scholarly research, sometimes special needs call for special techniques, and it is my hope to help you and your students have an easier job finding what you want to find. I hope you all have a lovely day, and I hope you will join us again in 2 weeks for the Modern Search Literacies webinar. Oh, and if you're still here, one last thing. When this ends, in your browser there will appear a survey, and if you would be so kind as to take the survey and give me honest feedback, tell me how the sound quality was, talk about content. It is anonymous. So I will have no way to, I prefer the honesty so that I can make each time better than the last. Thank you so very, very much. Oh, the survey should appear in your browser after you close out of the webinar, and if for some reason it doesn't show up, email me, I'll send you the link, and your results will still be anonymous. Thank you very, very much. Have a lovely day, everyone.